The most emotionally perceptive person you know probably did not learn it from a book. There was no course, no shelf of paperbacks, no morning practice that made them that way. Ask them how they got so good at reading a room and they will usually shrug, because to them it does not feel like a skill. It feels like weather. It feels like something that has always been switched on. Somewhere along the way, noticing became automatic and paying attention to other people stopped being a choice. That is the part worth looking at. Abilities that feel automatic are usually abilities that were learned early, and things learned early were usually learned under pressure. A child in a calm house learns to read a room the way anyone learns a second language, slowly, and only when there is a reason. A child in a house where the mood could turn learns it the way you learn to swim after falling in. Faster, deeper, without the option of stopping. What comes out the other side is real ability, and it deserves to be understood rather than either celebrated or pitied. So this is not a video about how hard things were secretly good for you. Hard things are not good for you. It also will not tell you how you got here because that is yours and I do not know it. Some of what follows will match things that happened when you were young. Some will match a single year in your 20s that rearranged everything. Some of it will simply be your temperament, which is fine too, and no less real for having been there from the start. But the attention you built while getting through them is yours now. It works, and most people who have it have never had it named. 11 signs, one at a time. Some will land, some will not, and that is fine. It is worth saying what the list is not. It is not a test, there is no score at the end, and nothing in it is a condition with a name. These are patterns, common ones, and naming a pattern is useful mainly because an unnamed habit tends to look like a personal defect. If you recognize yourself in most of them, take it as a description and not a diagnosis. Sign 1. The room read. Some people walk into a room and know the temperature of it before anyone has spoken. Described from the outside, this can sound like paranoia. You are told you overthink, that you are reading into things, that nobody is upset, and you are imagining it. What is actually happening is faster and plainer than that. You are reading posture, the distance between two people, whose drink has not been touched, whose sentence stopped a beat early. None of it is mysterious. All of it was already in the room, and you learned to collect it because there was a period when the mood of a room decided how your evening went. When the cost of missing a shift in the air is high, attention stops being deliberate and becomes a reflex. The reflex stays long after the cost is gone. That is why you can walk into a birthday party where nothing at all is wrong and still scan it. Nobody scans a room they have never needed to scan. It is worth noticing what the scan actually gives you, because described out loud it sounds vaguer than the process is. You are not sensing anything. You are counting. Two people who normally talk are not talking. One person keeps checking a phone but is not reading it. The host laughs a half beat after everyone else. Any one of those is nothing at all. Together they are a pattern, and you have been assembling patterns like that since before you could name them. The useful part is that you are usually right. The tiring part is that the scanning has no off switch. There is a second cost that is easier to miss. Accuracy without permission is a strange thing to carry, because you often know a room has turned before anybody in it is willing to say so. Mention it, and you are the one making it awkward. Say nothing, and you spend the evening holding information that nobody wants. Most people in your position learn to hold it, and to smile, and to file the whole thing away until a week later when someone finally admits that yes, something was going on that night. You already knew. You knew at the door. If you have ever left a gathering worn out while everyone else was still saying how nice it was, that is the reason. You did not attend the party. You monitored it. And monitoring costs more than attending. That is one. The second is its close relative, and it causes far more arguments. Sign 2. What isn't said. This one gets called selective hearing, or being difficult, or refusing to take people at their word. You ask if something is wrong, they say it is fine, and you do not believe them. Not out of suspicion. Out of evidence. You heard the half second before the word fine. You heard their sentence come back shorter than their sentences usually are. You noticed they used your full name, which they only do when they are annoyed, and that the reply was 2 words instead of the usual 4 lines. Speech is only part of how people communicate, and if you learned early that the spoken part was not the reliable part, you started tracking everything around it. That happens in houses where things were rarely said outright, where you were told everything was normal while it clearly was not, and where guessing correctly was safer than asking. So you built a second channel. You listened to pace, to pauses, to word choice, to the gap between what a face is doing and what a mouth is saying. 2 things are worth holding at once here. You are often right, and being right does not entitle you to act on it before the other person is ready to say it out loud. The ability is the reading. The discipline is the waiting. There is a version of this that goes wrong, and it is worth saying plainly. Reading someone accurately can slide into deciding you know their reasons, and reasons are the one thing the second channel cannot pick up. You can tell that someone is upset. You cannot tell why, and guessing why is where good readers get themselves into trouble. There is a way to use this that keeps the value and drops the risk. Say what you observed, not what you concluded. You went quiet after that phone call is something a person can answer. You are angry with me is something a person has to defend against, and they will, even when it is true. The observation opens a door, the conclusion shuts one. That distinction sounds small, and it is the entire difference between someone who is easy to talk to and someone who is exhausting to be read by. If this one is not you, if you take people at their word and it works out, nothing is missing from you. Plenty of people read only the words, and it serves them perfectly well, partly because most of the time the words are accurate and the second channel is picking up noise. Being able to hear it does not make it always worth listening to. Some houses simply meant what they said. Yours taught a longer route. Sign 3. Calm in the wrong order. In an emergency, you are the one who is fine. Later, on an ordinary Tuesday when nothing is happening, you come apart over something small, and to everyone watching it looks like an overreaction, including to you. The order seems backwards. It is not. During a crisis, your attention narrows to the next necessary action, and feeling gets postponed, because feeling is expensive and there is a phone call to make. That postponement is a skill, and people who handled things young get very good at it. The bill arrives when the situation ends. Safety is what allows a postponed feeling to arrive, so it turns up at the worst-looking moment, in a supermarket queue, in the car, 3 days after everything was resolved. Once you know that, the late collapse stops looking like weakness and starts looking like what it is. It is the invoice, not the injury. You will also have noticed that the crisis version of you is competent in a way that surprises people who only know the ordinary version. The voice goes level. The sentences get short. You start handing tasks to people older than you and they take them, which is strange for everybody afterwards. People will ask how you stayed so calm, and the honest answer usually disappoints them. You did not stay calm. Calm is a feeling, and there was no feeling at all, only a sequence of things that needed doing in a particular order. Numbness has a worse name than it deserves, because in the hours when somebody has to make the phone calls, numbness is what makes the phone calls. The trouble starts only if it outstays its usefulness, if the ordinary weeks also arrive with the volume turned down, and everything is manageable, and nothing quite reaches you. If that is where you are, the useful thing to know is that it usually lifts in the same direction it came from gradually, and often first in ways that look unrelated. Music lands again. A film gets to you in a cinema. Those are not small signs. You held it together on purpose, and the holding had a price. What helps is not trying to feel it sooner. It is expecting the wave and knowing roughly when it comes, so you stop reading it as proof that something is broken in you. Nothing is broken. The timing was learned. And late feelings are still feelings. That is 3. The next few are less about danger and more about how you behave when there is none. Sign 4. The reflex apology. You apologize when someone bumps into you. You apologize for the weather, for asking a question, for taking up a seat you paid for. People find it charming or irritating depending on the day, and both readings miss what is happening. Sorry, said that often, is not an apology. It is a de-escalation tool. It is a small offering placed in front of a possible conflict to make the conflict less likely, and it gets installed in people who once needed conflicts to be less likely. If keeping the peace was part of your job before you were old enough to have a job, the word goes automatic. Notice what it is aimed at, not at wrongdoing. At tension, you apologize the moment the air changes, regardless of who changed it. Watch where else it goes. It shows up in email in the sentence that opens by hoping this is not a bother. It shows up in the way you thank a waiter twice. It shows up when you cancel something you had every right to cancel and spend 2 paragraphs explaining. There is a quieter version that does not use the word at all. It is the preemptive shrinking, making yourself slightly smaller before anyone has asked you to, offering to take the worst seat before the seats have even been discussed. Both come from the same place. Both are attempts to settle a bill that has not been issued by someone who once lived where the bill always arrived. And people are not good at noticing what you never asked for. They notice only that you are easy. The repair is slower than it sounds because the word is faster than thought. People who work on this tend to describe the same sequence. For a long time you catch it just after it leaves your mouth. Then you catch it as it arrives. Only much later do you catch it before. That is ordinary progress, and it is not a failure that the reflex is quicker than you are. There is a cost, and it is worth naming plainly. Apologizing for existing teaches the people around you that you will absorb whatever blame is in the room, and some of them will let you. The correction is not to stop apologizing. It is to catch the half second before the word arrives and ask whether you actually did anything. Usually you did not. Say something else instead. Thank you for waiting works where sorry for the delay does not. Same warmth, different price. Sign 5. The exit plan. You know where the door is. You sit facing it, you park where you can leave, you keep a small amount of money somewhere separate, and you know how you would get home from anywhere you agree to go. Said out loud, it sounds like distrust, and people who love you sometimes hear it that way. It is not distrust. It is a habit built inside situations you could not leave by someone who promised themselves that next time there would be an option. Options are what the plan is really about. It is rarely used, and that is not a flaw in it. Its job is to make the room survivable, because a room with an exit is a room you can relax in, and the relaxing is what the plan buys. The plan also explains something people find hard to square about you, which is that you can be warm and fully committed and still know, at any given moment, exactly what you would do if you had to be somewhere else by morning. Those two facts sit side by side, without arguing. What is worth looking at is not the plan itself, but how often it runs. Everybody has some version of it. The question is whether yours runs once when you book the trip, or whether it runs again at the restaurant, and in the taxi, and in the 2 minutes before you fall asleep in an unfamiliar room. A plan that runs once is preparation. A plan that keeps running is doing a job that no longer needs doing, and it is spending your attention to do it. This is one where the cost shows up years later. An exit plan for a bad situation is sense. An exit plan for a good one keeps a small part of you standing near the door, and the person across the table can feel it even if they cannot name it. If you have never needed a plan like this, do not go looking for one. But if you have always had one, it was doing a job. Some doors are worth walking further into. 5 in. From here, the signs move away from rooms and exits, and toward what happens between two people. Signs. When kindness feels like a bill, someone does something generous and your first move is to work out what it costs, not consciously. You thank them, you mean it, and underneath there is a quiet calculation running about what is now owed and when it will be collected. Compliments land the same way. You deflect, you make a joke, you find the flaw in the thing being praised, and afterwards you cannot really recall what was said. From the outside, this looks like low self-worth. Often it is something more specific than that. If warmth in your history arrived with conditions attached, or arrived shortly before it was withdrawn, then warmth itself became a signal that something is coming. That kind of learning does not do nuance. It simply noted that the pleasant part came first. Which means the flinch is not about the person in front of you, and it is not really about you either. It is about sequence. This is also the sign most often read as coldness by the person offering the kindness, and that misreading can run for years without either of you naming it. They see a wall. What is actually there is arithmetic they cannot see, running quietly, out of habit. One more thing comes with this, and it is why the sign matters more than it looks. If generosity reads as debt, you keep your relationships slightly balanced at all times. Someone buys lunch and you buy the next one immediately. Someone helps you move and you find something to do for them inside the week. It looks like good manners and it works as distance because closeness is partly made of small unsettled debts, left lying around between people who trust each other. None of this needs to become a project. Noticing it once, while it is happening, is most of the work. The next time someone does something for you and the calculation starts, you can watch it run and let the lunch go unrepaid for a week. Nothing has to be done about it immediately. The one useful move is to let a compliment sit for a second before you answer it, without agreeing, without arguing. Just receiving it and seeing that nothing follows. Do that often enough and the sequence starts to update, slowly and only from evidence. Sign 7. The long memory. You remember what people said and roughly how they said it. You remember a date mentioned once, the small promise made in passing, the exact wording of a sentence from 4 years ago that the other person has no memory of at all. This gets you called intense, and occasionally it gets used against you in an argument, which is unfair, because remembering is not the same as keeping a grudge. Memory attaches to importance. What was important to you as a child was accuracy about people, because knowing exactly what was said and how it was said was how you predicted what came next. Prediction was safety. So those details got filed with the care most people save for things they will be tested on. The tests never quite stopped. It is not a filing system you chose, and it does not sort by relevance. The name of someone's landlord is in there. So is the tone of one sentence said in a kitchen in a house you no longer live in. The system kept whatever mattered at the moment it was stored. It has a practical edge at work, which other people notice before you do. You are the one who remembers what was agreed in a meeting 3 months ago, and roughly who agreed to it, and what the objection was at the time. In rooms where everyone else is reconstructing, you are simply reporting. That gets read as diligence. It is closer to a filing habit you never installed on purpose and cannot uninstall. The strength here is obvious once someone points at it. You are the friend who remembers the surgery date, the interview, the name of the sister who was ill, and that kind of attention is rare and it is felt. The difficulty is that a filed sentence keeps its original temperature, and an old sentence can be replayed at full volume years later. Both are the same ability. One is care and one is rehearsal. Telling them apart takes practice. 4 to go, and they get harder to see from the inside. Sign 8. Doing it alone. You would rather carry the thing up the stairs yourself than ask the person standing right there. You move house alone, you learn the software alone, you sit with bad news for a week before mentioning it, and when someone finally offers help, you hear yourself say it is fine, I have got it, before you have checked whether you have got it. Independence is praised so consistently that it can hide in plain sight. Look at where it came from. Asking is only cheap when the answer is usually yes. If your early requests met irritation, or a yes with a mood attached, or nothing at all, then asking became expensive, and the sensible response to an expensive thing is to stop buying it. If asking has always been easy for you and has always gone well, nothing here needs fixing. But if it was expensive, you built a life that does not require it. The competence is real. You can do an unusual number of things without assistance, and that counts for something. It also makes you the person everyone else leans on, which feels good and quietly confirms the arrangement. Support runs one way. You are the one who turns up with the van, and when your own week falls apart, nobody knows, because there was never a moment where you said so. What it costs is that people who want to be close to you cannot get in through the ordinary door, which is being useful. Letting someone carry one end of something is not weakness. It is how the other person gets to be here. Try one small ask this week. Start smaller than the advice usually suggests. Nobody needs you to begin asking for things that matter. Begin with things that do not. Ask someone to pick something up on their way over. Ask a colleague how they would word an email you could word yourself. Small requests where a no would cost you nothing are how you collect evidence that asking is not what it used to be. Sign 9. Strangers tell you things. 10 minutes into a conversation with someone you've just met, they are telling you about their divorce. It happens on trains, at work parties, and queues, and it happens to you more than it happens to other people. The usual explanation is that you have a kind face. The more accurate explanation is that you do a specific set of things without noticing you do them. You hold eye contact a beat longer. You do not rush to fill the pause. You ask the second question instead of moving on after the first, and your face does not change when the answer gets heavy. That last one is the rare part. Most people flinch very slightly at difficult information. The speaker sees the flinch, and the speaker stops. You learn not to flinch, because there was a period when your reactions had consequences and a still face was the safest one to wear. Something else comes with it. You ask questions in an order that suits the person answering, starting wide and narrowing, never opening with the hardest one. You did not study interviewing. You worked out young that people give you more when they are not cornered. The cost is specific and it builds slowly. Being the person everyone tells things to means your week fills with other people's weather, and because you are good at holding it, none of them can tell that it accumulates. It is also a role that can stand in for closeness rather than build it. You know a great deal about a lot of people. It is worth asking occasionally, how many of them could describe what your last 6 months were like? That is not an argument for closing up. It is an argument for picking one or two of them and going second sometimes, which is harder than it sounds for someone who has spent a lifetime going first with the questions. What it produces now is a person other people feel safe unloading to. That is worth a great deal, and it has a limit. Being easy to talk to is not an obligation to listen. You are allowed to be full. 2 left, and these are the 2 that almost nobody thinks to call strengths. Sign. The truth you can hold. Someone tells you something unflattering about yourself and you do not come apart. You go quiet, you think about it, and if it is accurate, you say so. From the outside, this can look like coldness or like you did not care enough to be hurt. Underneath it is a particular tolerance. Most people meet criticism with defense because criticism feels like a threat to their standing. If you spent early years having to assess yourself accurately in order to predict how others would treat you, then hearing a hard thing out yourself is familiar ground rather than new terrain. You have been there. You know it does not kill you. There is a version of this that gets mistaken for confidence and is really something else. Confidence assumes it will hold up. What you have is closer to a settled expectation that some of it will not, together with a working knowledge of what happens next when it does not. Where it does its real work is in learning anything difficult. Most people stall at the point where they are visibly bad at something in front of others because that moment feels like a verdict. For you, it is closer to information, unpleasant but usable, so you keep going through the part where other people quietly stop. That is why this sign turns up so often in people who picked up a skill late and got good at it anyway. That tolerance is why you can change course faster than people who need to be right, and why you are often the one who says the uncomfortable thing in a meeting while everyone else waits. Here is the part that needs watching. The same tolerance can make you accept criticism that is not true, because absorbing it is quicker than contesting it. Holding a hard truth is a strength. Holding someone else's projection is just weight. Check which one is in your hands. Sign 11. Starting from nothing, you have rebuilt at least once. A job ended, a relationship ended, a city stopped working, and you began again from a smaller position than you had held in years. People around you called it brave, which was kind and slightly beside the point, because it did not feel brave. It felt procedural. You made a list. You did the first thing on the list. That is the entire method, and it sounds too plain to be worth anything, right up until the week somebody else needs it. You are useful inside other people's disasters in a way that is hard to fake, because you are not reassuring them. You are telling them what the next fortnight actually contains. The other half of it is that your definition of enough was set lower than most people's, and that has two faces. It makes you very hard to panic, because you have seen what the floor looks like and you know it is survivable. It can also make you slow to want things, since wanting was once expensive, and someone who has rebuilt from nothing can mistake a low ceiling for safety and stay under it for years without noticing. Both faces are worth knowing, because the first is a real advantage and the second is easy to mistake for contentment. The test is simple enough to run. Ask whether you are staying because it is good or because it is quiet. This is the sign that shows up latest and carries the most, and it is not about resilience as a personality trait. It is about having proof. Someone who has never lost the floor has to imagine what losing it would be like, and imagination makes it enormous. You do not have to imagine. You know what the first week is like, and the second, and that the third is usually when the panic lifts a little. That knowledge lowers the cost of every risk you consider afterwards. It is also why you are hard to threaten. A person who has already survived starting over is difficult to steer with the fear of starting over. Nobody would choose the education, but the knowledge does not expire. So back to the person from the beginning, the one who shrugs when you ask how they knew the room had gone cold. They are not being modest. They have no memory of learning it, because it's learned the way you learn to walk on ice, one careful step at a time, in a season nobody chose. That is worth being honest about. None of this is an argument for the things that built it. Hard years are not a curriculum, and nobody should be grateful for them. The distinction that matters is between the cause and the capacity. The cause was not a gift. The capacity is real, it is yours, and it moves. Attention that once tracked danger can track what a client actually needs. Reading a silence can make you the person a team trusts with the difficult conversation. The watchfulness that used to be a full-time job can become something you switch on and off, which is a slow change, and it mostly happens in safe rooms with patient people. That part is worth repeating, because it is the only promise in this video. The watchfulness can turn down, not by being argued with and not by deciding to trust people. It turns down the way it turned up, through repetition, in ordinary rooms where the bad thing keeps not happening. None of that is fast, and the timeline is not really up to you. What is up to you is where the attention goes now that it is not needed for its original job. That is the actual freedom in this, and it is smaller and more useful than it sounds. People who make that turn tend to describe it in fairly plain terms. The noticing did not stop. It stopped being aimed at the exits and started being aimed at whatever is in front of them. One last thing, since this is a video about noticing. Whatever your score on the 11, this is a description and not a diagnosis, and if any of it sits heavily, it is the kind of thing worth saying out loud to someone qualified to hear it. So, one question, and you can answer it in a few words. Which of the 11 did you recognize first?